Welcome back, everybody. It's Thursday, July 18th, 2024. Born on this date in 1938, the late actor Britt Leach of Gadsden. In 1941, Martha Reeves of Martha and the Vandellas, originally from Eufaula. Matt Wake just talked about her on yesterday's show. And in 1962, soap opera actress Jensen Buchanan of Montgomery. She moved to Wisconsin at a young age. Her roles included Vicki Hudson and Vicki's twin on Another World. Today is National Caviar Day, by the way. I don't know if Mullet Row counts or not. But let's talk smartphones and teenagers, the Congressional District 2 race, Birmingham's call for a ceasefire in Gaza, and relatively cooler temperatures, like as compared to very uncool temperatures, I guess. I'm Mike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. The hot topic of mental illness among teenagers was brought before state lawmakers on Wednesday, reports AL.com's Mike Cason. The particulars here are nothing new. Studies and reports have shown depression among teenagers is up, so are visits to ERs because of self-harm, and we know the world has replaced a whole lot of real life with smartphones. Now, just how related are those things? Public health experts largely believe there's a connection. Last year, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy has said that adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media are twice as likely to show symptoms of anxiety or depression. This year, a mainstay on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list is Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. Now, with all that as a backdrop, Alabama Mental Health Commissioner Kim Boswell included teen mental health during a broader discussion at an informal budget hearing with the Alabama lawmakers. Using proposed solutions from The Anxious Generation, Boswell bent lawmakers' ears with a few recommendations. They included a ban or restriction on cell phone use in public schools. And as we mentioned here last week, some schools and school districts are already making or considering those steps. Other recommendations that are also aimed at parents include not letting students have a smartphone before high school and keeping them off social media until after they've turned 16. Now, how much might we expect lawmakers to do on the subject is anyone's guess, but health experts are concerned about social media replacing the real, live social interaction that children used to have. Said Boswell, quote, "I think you have to convince the parents that it's not the best thing for kids to have access to phones all the time, to go back to some of the things that we used to do. Getting them engaged in sports, getting them engaged in activities, playing with other kids," end quote. I try to get mine to have her friends over to do yard work together. I'll let you know when I start seeing results from that one. Now, when a federal court ordered that Alabama redraw part of its congressional map, the point was to create another district in the state that would give black residents the upper hand in selecting the candidate they'd like to have represent them in the U.S. House of Representatives. And apparently the court meant it, because it rejected an effort from the state legislature and had an appointed team redraw the map again. The result, in effect, was a District 2 that would almost certainly deliver a second Democratic congressperson from Alabama. Well, we might not ought to get too far ahead of ourselves. Alexander Willis of the Alabama Daily News reports that political science experts are pointing to several things that could keep the seat red next year. And maybe the biggest factor is the race at the top of the ballot, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump for president. Which of those candidates is energizing his own voters versus incentivizing others to vote against him? Said Auburn University professor Joseph Astrup, "You look at those two excitement levels, and the Democrats are lower right now than the Republicans. So I think that's something that cuts against Figures," he's talking about Shamari Figures, the Democrat, "in this race. That's the key national issue that's going to affect this race." A January poll by Suffolk University showed that 18% of Democratic primary voters described themselves as very enthusiastic to vote for Biden in November. 18%. 44% of Republican voters said the same about Trump. Now, Biden's debate performance and Trump's surviving an assassination attempt have certainly not equalized those numbers any. Jess Brown was a longtime poli-sci professor at Athens State University. He predicted that Trump's base would turn out, but that, quote, Biden is not a comparable catalyst for African American turnout, but if the Democrats change horses and nominate Vice President Kamala Harris, the dynamics of African American voter turnout will change and probably be increased slightly. Now, despite all that, we still could call Republican candidate Caroline Dobson an underdog against Democrat Shamari Figures. Analysis of past election statistics show that the black preferred candidate would have won 15 of the past 17 congressional elections in that current district. The Birmingham City Council has joined some other cities across the U.S. by passing a resolution of support for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, reports AL.com's Greg Garrison. The resolution also calls for the release of all hostages. Hamas reportedly took more than 200 hostages during its terrorist attacks in Israel on October the 7th. Pro-Palestinian groups have lobbied the Birmingham Council for months to support a ceasefire. Today's expected high temperatures are falling across the state, reports AL.com's Lee Morgan. Rain might have already cooled it off for you some the past couple days, but there's a front limping its way into the state that's going to raise those rain chances. Now, whether and how much relief you get depends on how much rain shows up in your neighborhood. The front could stall out while it's here, extending that weather pattern through the weekend. Also, rain chances might stay high next week, along with the cooler than average temperatures. Keeping in mind that average temperatures in July, Alabama is a pretty high bar. Well, thank y'all so much for listening. We're going to be back here again tomorrow. Until then, y'all come by and see what we're doing on the internet at al.com.